Hello there, I'm Barbara Williams. I am a volunteer for the Natural Land Institute and for the Forest Preserves of Winnebago County. I've been chasing after bee and wasp pollinators in this area for more than 10 years. And if you take the time to get to know them, you'll find that they are fascinating and often very beautiful creatures. Some bees and wasps live in very complex societies, but most of them lead solitary, quiet lives, kind of keeping to themselves and minding their own business. Plants need pollination to produce fruit and strong and healthy seeds. Pollination is actually the way plants have sex. Bees and wasps come to flowers to feed on the nectar, and as they move from plant to plant, they move pollen from the anther of one plant to the stigma of another plant of the same species. And they just do that in the course of ordinary feeding. They move the pollen, really most times accidentally, because it sticks to their bodies while they're feeding from one plant to another. Bees and wasps are enormously important to us because they're the main pollinators of about 85% of all the flowering plants in the world. They also pollinate over 100 different crops that we grow just here in the United States. Let's take a look at a few bees and wasps. When I first mention pollinators, most people think about honeybees. Honeybees are very important to our agricultural system. A lot of people raise honeybees, and they are very good pollinators of many different crops and orchards, but they are one species of the hundreds of pollinators that are found in our area. Literally hundreds of types of pollinators. Wasps and bees mostly are native to North America. The honeybee is not native. It was brought from Europe, Africa, or Asia. You can see this one has big round blobs of pollen on its back legs. It's feeding here on the flowers of pagoda dogwood, and the pagoda dogwood has just come into bloom. This bee is collecting both nectar and pollen from this plant. These tiny native bees are pollinating a beautiful wild hyacinth. This Virginia waterleaf is getting pollinated by a two-spotted bumblebee. Watch as she stops to groom her face and tongue. Here's one of our native bees feeding on a flower of Jacob's ladder. He's a smaller version of a bumblebee, sort of a bumblebee look-alike. You see the pollen on the back legs there? He's reaching deep into this flower to get as much pollen and nectar as he can. There are several species of these small, brilliant green metallic bees. Watch how hard she's working to collect pollen and nectar. Wasps and bees are different in some ways and very similar in other ways. Bees tend to be fuzzy. They have fairly short legs. They look kind of chubby. And bees, the females, carry pollen either in globs on their back legs or dusted on their bodies, often on their bellies. Bees are vegetarians. They feed exclusively on pollen and nectar. Wasps, on the other hand, are shiny. They don't have the fuzz that bees have. They have much longer legs, and they have very skinny waists. Wasps also are omnivores. At some point in their life, most wasps feed on animal protein. Female wasps often feed animal protein in the form of other insects to their larvae. This is one of our small solitary wasps. You knew it was a wasp and not a bee, right? It's pollinating sweet cicely. This little jumping spider is not a pollinator, but he's hiding right behind a sweet cicely flower. And he's probably waiting for a pollinator to come along so he can get something to eat too. This is one of our small native bees. It's feeding on the flowers of a pagoda dogwood. It's a very little insect, and you can see that its back legs are completely covered with pollen. It's feeding vigorously on these flowers, collecting the pollen and feeding on the nectar. A lot of our insects, and especially our pollinators, are in trouble right now. They're suffering from a loss of habitat, from the overuse of pesticides, from the effects of climate change, and from various parasites and diseases. But we can help them. We can stop using pesticides. Pesticides that are meant to kill the insects that we don't like also kill the insects that we do like. Butterflies, moths, ladybugs, dragonflies, fireflies, and of course our pollinators. We can leave places for pollinators to feed and to nest. They need leaf litter. They need dead trees. They need weedy places. We don't need to manicure every single inch of all of our property that we own. And we can provide them with a lot of flowers to feed on. We can either create flower gardens, or we can simply let some of the wild plants grow up and flower. You know, dandelions and white clover are wonderful nectar plants for bees, but we mow them all down. And as soon as they bloom again, we mow them again. So this is a great excuse to mow less lawn. We could make our lawns a lot smaller and let some of the edge parts simply grow up and let the wild plants bloom. Take a minute to appreciate the beauty of the next 3 native wasps.